Hello and welcome to this section on security goals. Previously in this section, we have talked about security mechanisms like identification, authentication, authorization, which are often confused with each other. Also, we discussed confidentiality and data integrity. In this lecture, it is time to discuss another fundamental concept of security, that is non-repudiation. And the threat that non-repudiation mechanisms are meant to protect against is false denial by the sender or receiver in a transaction. We will see later in this lecture what do we mean by false denial by the sender or receiver in a transaction. If you see a simple Google search for repudiate tells us that repudiate means to reject something. Repudiation means rejection of truth or denial of truth. Non-repudiation is concerned with preventing such a denial. But what possibly the transacting parties can try to deny in a transaction? To understand about this better, let's see in detail what happened in the previous transaction involving Vinod and Sindhu. Late in the afternoon, they meet for lunch and Sindhu asks Vinod about the money which she had transferred to him and when is he going to pay back to her. But Vinod doesn't want to pay that money back to Sindhu and he denies the transaction that happened between them. Vinod denies the transaction and says that he had not requested for any money transfer. Vinod is rejecting the origin of the data itself. He is making false denial about the transaction that actually happened between Vinod and Sindhu. The very first problem is how to ensure that the sender cannot deny sending the message in the first place. But Sindhu is smart and she already knows how authentication works from the previous lectures, and she was able to prove the origin of the data and that the transfer request came from no other than Vinod. But Vinod is smart too. He thinks it's okay if the origin of the data is proved. This doesn't matter. He has learnt about active attackers who can modify the transaction message, and so he claims that even though he made the transfer request, he never requested for $1,000 to be transferred to him, and he is not going to pay $1,000 to Sindhu. And the account number to which he transferred the money is not his account number. Vinod is rejecting the integrity of the data that was received by Sindhu from Vinod. Again, he is falsely denying the integrity of the data. The second problem is that we should look at is how to ensure that the sender cannot deny the integrity of the message or the content of that specific message that was exchanged in the transaction. But Sindhu is aware of the situation and she already knows how data integrity works from the previous lectures too. And she was able to prove that integrity of the data was intact and Vinod actually requested for $1,000 and he cannot deny it. So let's revisit our question which we left before in the previous slide. What possibly transacting parties can try to deny in the transaction? Transacting parties with wrong intention can try to reject the origin of the data. The person can also try to reject the integrity of the data itself, that he didn't send that specific message even though he agrees that the message came from him. So non-repudiation is concerned with preventing such a denial that we just observed what happened between Vinod and Sindhu. To have non-repudiation means having both authentication and integrity. Please note it down. To have non-repudiation means having both authentication and integrity together in a transaction. Authentication protects us when other transacting party try to reject the origin of the message, and integrity protects us when the other transacting party try to reject the integrity of the data itself. So we must have authentication and integrity to have non-repudiation. Moving on to next slide. Now coming back to the question again, how to ensure that the sender cannot deny sending the message in the first place? We have the answer here as we just observed from the previous discussions. Non-repudiation doesn't allow the sender of a message to refuse the claim of not having sent it. It associates identity of the sender with the message in a way that the sender cannot deny the origin of the data. So, non-repudiation helps to ensure that sender cannot deny sending the message in the first place. Moving on to the other query here. How to ensure that the sender cannot deny the integrity of the message or the content of that specific message that was exchanged in the transaction. Again, non-repudiation doesn't allow the sender of a message to refuse the claim of not having sent a specific message. How it does it? Non-repudiation associates the identity of the sender with the content of the message. That sender cannot claim to have sent a specific message with a different content. So from the previous slide, we know non-repudiation means a user cannot deny or repudiate having performed a transaction. Non-repudiation combines authentication and integrity together, and non-repudiation authenticates the identity of a user who performs a transaction, and it also ensures the integrity of that transaction. So we can say non-repudiation provides proof of the origin of the data, and it also provides proof of the integrity of the data. When I say proof of origin, what I mean is non-repudiation associates identity of the sender, in this case Vinod. So non-repudiation associates identity of the sender with the message exchanged in such a manner that the originator, here Vinod again, cannot deny the association with the message exchanged, and it provides evidence that sender in fact sent the specific message. Proof of the integrity of the data. What this means is non-repudiation associates identity of the sender with the content of the message. It provides evidence that sender sent that specific message. Sender cannot claim to have sent a message with a different content. We know from our previous discussions how authentication and integrity works. When we say that a message has been authenticated, then we know the source of the message. When we say that the message is intact and integrity has not been compromised, so we know that the message is the same as it was sent from the originator. So in summary, non-repudiation combines the benefits of both authentication and integrity. In the later section of the course, we will learn in details about the digital signature concept and how it helps in the implementation of non-repudiation mechanisms along with authentication and integrity. We will also learn about public key cryptography and digital certificates in order to fully understand the concept of digital signature. So with this, I am going to end this lecture on non-repudiation here. I hope that this lecture clarifies and help you better understand the non-repudiation concept. And that would wrap up this video. Also, I would like to encourage you to rate the course if you find it helpful. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.